Singapore. Stephen, good to have you with us. So, as we heard, Trump's favourite word in the dictionary is tariffs. What can we expect of him? Will he follow through on his threats, bearing in mind that you and I are talking a couple of days before the inauguration?
Yes, he will follow through. He believes in tariffs. He used tariffs last time. President Biden continue those tariffs, which the Trump administration incoming believes validates that everything they did was correct. So we're going to get tariffs, and we're going to get even more tariffs than we have right now.
So are those tariffs, though, going to help or hinder the US economy? Are they going to be inflationary?
They will probably be inflationary to some degree. Two things to keep in mind. First, the Trump administration will believe they can offset some of that inflationary impact from the tariffs by, taking action such as deregulatory impacts that they'll look at doing in terms of the United States. So they will do some things that can offset it. But more importantly, they believe that the United States has to have these tariffs because, one, it ensures a level playing field, especially with China. Two, it protects the U.S. national security. And if the cost of protecting U.S. national security is a little bit of inflation with tariffs, well, then that's a price worth paying.
How do you see, then, the relationship with China developing over the course of the Trump administration?
Well, I mean, I think with a starting point for the Trump administration and frankly for the Biden administration and even towards the tail end of the Obama administration is that China has taken action after action after action against the United States that has been unfair. It's been unfair in terms of forced technology transfers. When U.S. and other companies come into China, they're expected to give up their technology. It's unfair competition because of all the state subsidies that China has been doing. It's unfair competition with regards to the Made in China 2025 policy that's been in place for a decade now. That has worked for China. China is now dominating a lot of the key sectors of the 21st century, such as electric vehicles. And so this is in reaction to what China has done. So it's not so much what is Trump going to do to level that playing field, to retaliate against China, is will China be willing to engage with the United States, or is China going to further retaliate that will increase the trade war that we have ongoing now?
All right, so that's China dealt with. What about the rest of us? Do we need to worry about Trump's tariffs? How is all of this going to play out and affect all of us and the rest of the world?
Yeah, well, first, if you look at what's going to happen to the rest of the world with regards to China, this is not the U.S. against China. Other countries need to protect their sectors against China. You have tariffs coming on China from the EU, from Brazil, from countries in Southeast Asia because of the same unfair trade practices that China is using when it comes to electric vehicles. You also have concerns throughout the world, including the United States, but everywhere else, about China's excess capacity that they're dumping into markets that's hollowing out some of the industrial bases that you see in the U.S. and you see elsewhere. So part of this is going to be, is the world, in the EU, Southeast Asia, in parts Japan, Korea, what are they going to do vis-a-vis China? And then how is China going to react? Because if you see this, China plus one, this diversification of supply chain out of China because of the tariffs the U.S. has been putting on. It's not just the U.S. and the Japanese and the Europeans that are diversifying out of China. It's the Chinese who are diversifying out of China. And what is that going to do? There's upsides and downsides for countries for where China's diversifying. So it really is not just that what's going to happen between the U.S. and China. It's all the effects from that. In addition to, and I think to your point, Adrian, the U.S. is also going to put tariffs on other countries, Canada, Mexico, the EU. We're going to see that as well. And so, yeah, we're in for a lot of tension in trade going forward throughout the world as a result of Donald Trump's presidency and his approach to an America First agenda.
I'm glad you brought up Canada there. What are we to make of that nonsense? And also his threats to take Greenland by force and take back the Panama Canal.
Well, okay, so one's tariffs and one's more of a national security strategy that he seems to have going. With regards to Canada and Mexico, in particular. This is where Donald Trump says it's better not to work in the existing rules-based system, the WTO or trilateral or plurilateral trade agreements, but it's better for us to engage one-on-one bilaterally with countries, because anytime the U.S. negotiates with someone, the U.S. is in a superior position because it has a larger economy, it has a stronger military, it has a bigger market. It just got advantages for any one-on-one negotiation. And what Trump does is he weaponizes the economy, he weaponizes tariffs. And so he says to Canada, or he says to Mexico,
Correct.
I don't like what's happening at the border. I don't like what's happening at immigration. It's that piece is more of a bargaining chip, and we will see if countries are able to come to some bargain like Canada and Mexico. One would think so. One could say it's to the U.S.'s short-term benefit, but it probably harms the U.S. in the long term.
And finally, what about the markets? To what extent will they act as a guardrail against some of Trump's more extreme desires, if you like?
I mean, look, that is one of the only guardrails that seems to be left on Donald Trump's actions. What we're seeing so far in the hearings in the Republican-controlled Congress, in the House, in the Senate, they're going to do seemingly almost anything that Donald Trump says. So you're not going to have a check from the Congress. The courts don't seem to be standing up to him. They give deference much more to the executive branch and the president than they have done in the past. So the courts aren't necessarily going to be a check. The check is going to be the markets. And that is going to be the argument that people are going to have to make, governments, businesses, investors, when Donald Trump and his administration take those actions that are inflationary, both with regards to tariffs, with regards to deportation that's going to lead to wage inflation in the United States if he carries out what he's claiming to do. That's the markets are our guardrail, and we're going to have to see if the guardrail holds or if Donald Trump is going to say it differently this time. More important to focus on our national interest, regardless of the market's going to take a hit.
Really good to talk to you, Stephen. Many thanks indeed for being with us.
Thank you.